YouTube to wake up, and then we will be good to go. There it goes. Yeah. All right. There it is. Coming in. Yep. Cool. I like it. What's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good day, salutations. Whatever it is where you're at, I hope it's good. It is Thursday, April 30th, in this quarantine year of our Lord, 2020. Hope you're doing great. Hope you're having a good one. Hope you are staying safe, staying well, staying home. Hope you got something exciting planned for the weekend that involves staying home, but is exciting nonetheless. You know, we kind of create our own. Maybe you're having a fun Zoom dinner with some friends. Maybe you're having a Zoom game night. Maybe you're doing a FaceTime. I don't know. Can you play like a board game via FaceTime? I'm sure you can. Yeah, maybe you're doing that. I don't know. Some of my friends, they have a game night every Saturday. And but because Graham Elwood and I have our show, I cannot be there. So I usually pop in later, and the game night portion is already over. So I've not experienced the virtual gaming yet, but you know, seems pretty cool. So guys, Chris Hayes of MSNBC reported on Tara Reade, and here's what happened. Let's check out part of the report first.
There have been moments, I think for many of us, all of us, when we have heard about accusations against someone that we find ourselves desperately wanting not to believe. Whether that is because we have some personal admiration for the individual or their work, or political admiration, someone on our quote unquote side. But part of the difficult lesson of the Me Too era is not that every accusation is true and everything should be believed on its face, but that you do have to fight yourself when you feel that impulse. You have to do that in order to take seriously what is being alleged and what the evidence is and to evaluate it. And that is the case with the accusation by a woman named Tara Reade against Joe Biden. Reade briefly worked as a Senate aide in Biden's office in the early 90s. Last year, she told a California newspaper that in 1993, Joe Biden, quote, touched her several times, making her feel uncomfortable. Now, at that time, Reade was one of several women who came forward around that moment with accusations against the former vice president of inappropriate sort of over physicalness, touching, kissing, or hugging that they say made them feel uncomfortable. Then last month, she made a much more serious allegation, telling first a podcast and later the New York Times that in 1993, Joe Biden pinned her to a wall in the Senate building, reached under her clothing, and penetrated her with his fingers. Reade told the Times that she filed a complaint with the Senate that same year about what happened with Biden. Quote, she said she did not have a copy of it and such paperwork has not been located. Now, Reade also said she complained to Biden's executive assistant, as well as to two top aides about harassment by Mr. Biden, not mentioning the alleged assault. All three of those people who were interviewed by the Times deny having a memory of a complaint. A spokeswoman for Joe Biden says the allegation is false, and they have strongly denied it. This week, there was also a new development in the story, and that is that Tara Reade's former neighbor at the time went on the record with her name, telling Business Insider that in 1995 or 1996, a few years after this, that Reade told her she had been assaulted by Biden. NBC News reached out to Reade's neighbor, who later confirmed by text message the story. This on-the-record reporting from a neighbor, a roughly contemporaneous relaying of the story, has rightly occasioned a new round of coverage and scrutiny, while also creating some serious tension within the progressive coalition.
So there's part of the report. Now, as you guys know, if you watch this show regularly, you know that I'm not a big fan of Chris Hayes. I can't say I'm a big Chris Hayes guy. But I like what he did there. I really do. And here's why. So when he was saying the preamble, keep in mind that preamble was not for someone like me. And if you're a regular viewer of this show, it's not for someone like you either. It's for somebody who basically likes Joe Biden. He's saying, look, sometimes This isn't easy to reckon with. This isn't easy to look at because this is someone you put on a pedestal. That's essentially what he's saying. So for someone like me who doesn't put Joe Biden on a pedestal, it's not for me. It's for the average MSNBC viewer. He knows who his viewers are. And a lot of times you get people to open up to examining an allegation that is not politically friendly to them, so to speak, by bringing it forth that way and saying, hey, look, I know this isn't easy for you to look at, but you got to look at it. And when he brought up the section about Me Too, what he's doing there, what he did there, was he immediately refuted, the common excuse that that the Biden camp throws out there, where it's like, well, Me Too doesn't mean you just uncritically believe anybody. It's not what Me Too means. No one's saying that's what Me Too means. No one's saying that. No one's saying that Me Too means you just believe everybody uncritically. What it is saying, what Me Too is saying, and I like the way Chris Hayes pointed it out in that segment. He's like, what it is saying is that you have to look at this stuff, even when it makes you uncomfortable, and you can't just knee-jerk write somebody off just because it involves somebody that you might like politically. That's what he's saying. And that's an important message for MSNBC viewers to hear. And then he goes on to talk about Tara Reade. Now, what he didn't mention was the fact that everyone that Tara Reade has told has corroborated her story. Everyone she said that she has told corroborated her story. And the reason that we don't know whether or not something was filed with the Senate or not is because the University of Delaware refuses to make those records public. University of Delaware is housing those records. They refuse to make them public. He didn't mention any of that stuff. He also, referenced that New York Times article. There was a lot of stuff long before the New York Times article that came out. So there's a lot of stuff he kind of left out there, but nonetheless, brought it to some MSNBC viewers. And Lucy, you're blocking the computer. You're blocking the computer, Lucy. And MSNBC viewers in turn are losing their mind. Fire Chris Hayes, trending on Twitter now. And again, I don't bring all this up to defend Chris Hayes one way or another. I've always been critical of Chris Hayes, so I'll be complimentary where it's due. I'm glad he did this segment. I tip my hat to him for this segment. And I like the preamble that he gave at the beginning because it's something MSNBC viewers need to hear. It's not something I need to hear. It's not something you need to hear. But a lot of times you get people to accept a different way of looking at things and confronting something they don't want to confront by kind of connecting with them on the ethos level. We're saying, I know sometimes it's hard when this is someone you put on a pedestal, but this needs to be looked at. So, but anyway, people are calling for his head here. So here is when you just search the hashtag Fire Chris Hayes. Here, let me show it to you. So check this out. Listen to that. I don't know if this is parody or not. What is Fire Chris? Why is Fire Chris Hayes trending? What did I miss? Is he now a Russian asset? Bernie bro? What is it? Somebody should be fired if they like Bernie Sanders, right? Does he support Bernie Sanders? That's a reason. Someone should lose their job for that. Is he now a Russian asset? Did he get crowned by Russia? Did someone show up while Chris Hayes was having breakfast? Like, hello. Like, oh, who's that? Who's that? It is me. You are now asset. I'm an asset now? Yes, you are asset now. Okay, what should I do? Talk about Tara Reade. All right, I'm on it. Okay. All right. Do people... this might be... I feel like that has to be a parody account. That can't be a real thing. It probably is, actually. Here's someone, Glenn Greenwald running to the defense of Chris Hayes is really all you need to know about both of those clowns. Hashtag fire Chris Hayes. Remember, a basic rule of argumentation. When you attack a source and you have nothing else to stand on, and you make a point of an association and you have nothing else to stand on, that's because you have no real argument. You have no argument whatsoever. I don't like Glenn Greenwald, this person on Twitter. I'm a fan of Glenn Greenwald, but this person on Twitter, I don't like Glenn Greenwald. Why? Well, because someone powerful told me I shouldn't like Glenn Greenwald, so I don't like him. So everything he says is a lie. So if he's agreeing with Chris Hayes here, then Chris Hayes is a liar too. It's all a lie, and that's all I'll say about it. Let's see. Chris Hayes. Oh, here we go. Chris Hayes and Ari Melber have officially endorsed the re-election of the worst president in U.S. history, Donald Trump. When you promote National Enquirer-style gossip on your network that only seeks to empower Trump, then you are the enemy. Boycott MSNBC. Fire Chris Hayes. Whenever... I wonder why Chris Hayes has never done an in-depth investigation on Michael Moore's associate with Harvey Weinstein. Bernie so much. Let's see. Fire Chris Hayes is trending because he reported on a credible rape allegation. And this person says, as a survivor, I thank you for giving a voice to this story. Man. I mean, isn't it something? I will not be watching. I love tweets like this, by the way. This person says, I will not be watching MSNBC until Chris Hayes publicly apologizes for doing a segment on a non-credible and inconsistent story in primetime. Fire Chris Hayes. So let's just look at the first part of that tweet. I will not be, it's amazing to me when people just tweet in the ethers, what they're going to be doing as if, and do they think someone at MSNBC is going to see this and be like, no, not you. Not you, anonymous person on Twitter. You're not going to watch. What are we going to do? Retract this segment immediately. I will not be watching your network. There are 3 corporate networks posing as news channels in this country. They inflate their ratings because they're on in hotel rooms and airports and shit like that. And I will not be watching one of them. I said good day, sir. No one cares what you are and aren't going to watch. Just no one gives a shit. Not one person on this planet. And by the way, non-credible, inconsistent. Based on what? Based on what? Everybody who she said she told has corroborated that she did tell them around the time of the incident. She claimed that her mother called Larry King. There is footage where someone who is likely her mother called Larry King saying her daughter had an incident. They were speaking in vague terms because that's what Tara wanted. She didn't want to come forward. Everything that they throw out there, claiming that Tara Reade's story is inconsistent, can really just be traced back to that's how rape culture works. Why didn't she come forward sooner? Well, because a lot of victims don't come forward right away. And look at the way she's being smeared and vilified. And you really have to ask, why didn't she come forward sooner? You need to ask that question. Well, why did she, at times over the years, she has praised Joe Biden and this and that. Yeah, because she looked up to him. Because he was an important figure to her. And even after it happened, she didn't want anything bad to happen to him or his staff or his campaign. Because she was a fan of the Democratic Party. She supported Democrats. She said that. So yeah, when something like this happens, a lot of times victims should just try to push it down. Sometimes they blame themselves. This is all common. These are all common things that happen because as a society, we haven't done better. So it's all these things. And the same people who will use the hashtag believe women till they're blue in the face. Pun intended with the blue in the face part. Are now using all these excuses to dismiss Tara Reade when all of them can be traced back to, well, this is what rape culture does. We don't have a society where victims feel comfortable coming forward. So they shame themselves And then they try to just pretend like it didn't happen, or they internalize it, or they just, I mean, think about victims you know in your life, or maybe you're a victim yourself. And pretty much every explanation lobbed against Tara Reade. Now, I'm not saying I know one way for sure without a doubt. I don't. We don't yet, because there hasn't been a fair due process. I believe Tara Reade. I personally, using all the information at my disposal, believe her. That doesn't mean it's without a doubt true or not true. But I acknowledge my own bias. I believe her. It's too bad all these Biden apologist hacks on TV. Anyway. So I guess going bigger picture here, and we're gonna look at some mental gymnastics here in just a second. Going bigger picture here, whenever somebody says to you, or whenever you say to somebody else, rather, that the Overton window in the United States is so far to the right, it is so far to the right, it is remnant of a fascist authoritarian regime. It is so far to the right that we have actual open Nazis running as Republicans. And we have people like Mike Bloomberg running as the alternative to the right-wing party. And by the way, our supposed non-right-wing party, the Democratic Party, is to the right of other straight-up right-wing parties in other countries, depending on the issue. So whenever someone tells you that that's not true, that our Overton window isn't that messed up, think of this situation where right now, people who fancy themselves as left-leaning are shaming a reporter and calling for a reporter to be fired because he covered a rape allegation of somebody they like politically, a politician they like. He covered a rape allegation. And he covered it totally objectively. He didn't say, I mean, in that segment we watched, he didn't say that Joe Biden was guilty or not guilty. He just said this deserves to be looked at. This deserves to be heard. There have been developments in this story. And he reported on some of them. He didn't even report on all of them. He didn't even run the gamut on why what she's saying is very credible. There's a lot of stuff he left out about information that has come to the surface, i.e. people corroborating her story, other than just the neighbor, i.e. the mom's phone call to Larry Reade. So check this out. This is from the Palmer Report, where they're celebrating this. They're celebrating the fact that they're calling for a guy's head, calling for him to be fired for reporting on a rape allegation because it's someone they like politically. Chris Hayes gets destroyed for running dishonest story about Joe Biden. For weeks, pockets of social media have been kicking around an allegation that's so plainly non-credible on its face. No evidence. This is just what they're... No, not non-credible. Why? Well, because... Well, actually, we'll get to this. We're going to read on. The mainstream media hasn't wanted to touch it. A woman claims Joe Biden sexually assaulted her, but she keeps changing her story in fundamentally self-contradictory ways. She keeps claiming she told various people about it at the time, but most of them say she's lying. No, the people she said she told, they all corroborate she did tell them. She's regularly professed her love for Vladimir Putin. She took a Russian literature class, and she was writing fiction. So right away, two just straight up lies in that first paragraph. If the Me Too movement has taught us anything, is that we should listen to women, even when they're making accusations against men we like and men we think we trust. That's true. The point of listening to see if her story is credible and to give her the full benefit of the doubt unless her story is clearly non-credible. This is the rare instance where a woman's story is clearly non-credible. Again, why? Here's their evidence. Let's keep reading this this article. I don't think it's fair to call this blog that, I mean, I just came across this and it's so freaking ridiculous. I had to share it. To give you an idea of how uniquely non-credible this accusation is, Senator Kristen Gillibrand, who has a zero tolerance policy when it comes to sexual misconduct and led the charge in taking down Al Franken, says she believes in Joe Biden and doesn't believe his accuser. That tells me all I need to know. This isn't a comedy blog, by the way. This isn't parody. Hey, this is so non-credible. Her story has changed. It's over the years. She didn't want to come out about this. She didn't want to come out about this. So the story has evolved over the years. You mean like what happens to a ton of victims? They don't want to come forward about something, so that they kind of bury it or skate around it, and then eventually they come forward. That happens to a ton of victims. That's very common. Yeah, but Kirsten Gillibrand, she believes him. She believes Joe Biden. Joe Biden, by the way, people believe Biden. Biden has said nothing. As of the recording of this, let me reiterate it because it needs reiterated. Biden has said nothing. Not a thing. He has said nothing. I mean, that is amazing. That is incredible. That is the ultimate statement of privilege, where you can not say a freaking word and people just take your side on instinct. Yep, he's telling the truth. He didn't say anything. Well, we're projecting that he's going to tell the truth at some point. And you should see him walk on water. He's like, no malarkey, as he's walking on water. Kirsten Gillibrand said she believes him. You know who else, quote, believes him is Nancy Pelosi. Here's some amazing Nancy Pelosi footage. She always has her thumb on the pulse. She gets it. So check this out. Here, hold on. Let me get the volume up for you. We'll start it at the beginning. It's a civilized show. We start the clips at the beginning. Here's what Nancy Pelosi is saying on CNN with her cool-looking blue scarf thing.
I also want to ask you about former Vice President Joe Biden and about this allegation that is being made by one of his former Senate staffers. Do you think that it is time for Vice President Biden to address this head on himself?
Well, I have great sympathy for any women who bring forth an allegation. I'm a big, strong supporter of the Me Too movement. I think it's been made a great contribution.
Could they not give her a lavalier mic, by the way? Like, what? Why didn't they? She's like totally echoing because I guess she's in. Well, I don't know where she's at. That might be a green screen behind her. I'm not sure where she is in this. Anyway, whatever. It's
to our country, and I do support Joe Biden. I'm satisfied with how he has responded. I know him. I was proud to endorse him on Monday. Very proud to endorse him, and so I'm satisfied with that.
I mean, he hasn't. To be clear, he hasn't addressed it. His campaign has addressed it, but he has not directly.
Look at Nancy Pelosi's face. Ooh, I was hoping you wouldn't go there, because that's the script that we were given on this. The script that we were given on this was, hey, we're happy with what he said. And we were hoping you weren't going to follow up and say, well, he hasn't said anything. We were hoping you wouldn't go there.
Addressed it. Should he directly, publicly address it?
You know, it's a matter that he has to deal with. But I am impressed with the people who worked for him at the time, saying they absolutely never heard one iota of information about this. Nobody ever brought forth a claim or had anybody else tell them about such a claim. But again, we have an important election at hand, one that is, I think, one of the most important ones that we've had. We say that every election, but I think that
we say that every election so that you vote for a shitty candidate that's just going to uphold what Wall Street wants. We say that every election. Guys, someday we're going to be able to have real change, but this election is just too important. This election is just too important. So you have to vote for this horrible candidate who's going to give the banks what they want, is going to continue the war machine, going to continue the military-industrial complex, isn't really going to do anything for workers, because the alternative is this straight-up fascist fringe lunatic. And so that's what we have to do this time. Next time, you're going to have a choice. Well, except next time, it's going to be the same situation. You're going to have to accept our shitty candidate. It's almost like this is by design. it's almost like when you keep accepting the lesser of two evils, eventually the Overton window goes like this, then 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 like this. At this point, I am in the neighbor's apartment with how far to the right our acceptable dialogue for conversation is and where we're at politically as a country. And you think that maybe, just maybe, it's by design.
This one is the most crucial. And
it's the most crucial
because he's a person of great.
It's the most crucial until 2024, and then until 2028, then until
values, integrity, authenticity, imagination, and a connection to the American people. He understands the kitchen table issues of America's working families. His father lost his job when he was a boy. He knows what that feels like for a family and how they're going to pay their bills, their health bills, the education of their children, supporting seniors in their families and the rest. It's just he's the personification of hope and optimism for our country. And I was proud to endorse him. And America needs a person like Joe Biden with his integrity and his vision for the future.
If somebody wrote a movie script about our contemporary political culture, and it was a drama or even a comedy, one or the other, it would not get made, and the production company would turn it down because they would say it's not realistic enough. They would say, this is such a parody of itself, no one will take this seriously. No one will even find the humor because it's just so over the top that, come on. She gives the scripted response, the same thing Stacey Abrams essentially said, like, oh, I'm satisfied with his response. They're hoping no one goes a step further and says, well, he didn't say anything. You're happy with his response. He has said nothing. There hasn't been a response. They're hoping nobody asks that question. They're hoping no one goes there. But then if you do go there, well, where do they pivot next? Hey, this election's important. Trump. Joe Biden has had loss in his life. He's had family members die, just like everyone else on the frickin' planet, by the way. He's lost family members. Join the club of every other person who has ever walked the face of the fucking earth. But he's a good guy. That's essentially all she said. When the reporter challenged her to say, well, he hasn't said anything, she just goes, well, Trump, this is the most important election. And then she shows her hand a little bit on accident. By the way, we say that every election. Every single election, we say that. We say that every single election. And then we put up this shit candidate who inspires nobody. How can anyone listen to her and think this is remotely real? Think that there's actually a genuine political struggle in our politics, and think that, at the end of the day, this isn't a situation where both of these horrible political parties have the same owners. Man. And keep in mind, United States, in this country, people who consider themselves moral and left-leaning are calling for a reporter to be fired because he covered a rape allegation regarding someone they like politically. That's the country we live in. That's the United States. Those are people on the supposed left that feel that way. They're calling for a reporter to be fired. A reporter who, by the way, most of the time just kind of gives them the catnip they want. I'm sorry about the catnip analogy, Lucy. I hope that doesn't offend you. I hope it's okay I say that. You know what I mean by that. I'll give you, she's on the, you can't see her. The lower third is blocking her. Ron sometimes gets distracted and he pets his cat. I don't like that. I hate joy. Whenever I see it on a computer screen, I just get mad. Lucy, She's standing right at the edge of the desk. You can't see her. If she leaned up and over a little bit, she'd be in the camera. She can go there if she wants to. She chooses not to. She's very stoic. So anyway, man, it's just so ridiculous. And again, not a big Chris Hayes fan, but I will tip my hat where it's due. And I applaud him for covering this. And in that 2-minute segment, I didn't see his full segment on it. But in that 2-minute segment, I actually do like the approach he took. Because that was something MSNBC viewers needed to hear. And I know when you see the response on Twitter, you're just thinking, wow, how psychotic. But I would like to think, and maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I'd like to think that there were a handful, and maybe it was just a handful, but nonetheless, I'd like to think there were some, blue no matter who, the Democrat can do no wrong, that's going to watch that segment and it's going to say, you know what? She does deserve to be heard. She does deserve to have a fair due process. And Joe Biden is not above the law. And Joe Biden may be guilty of something. And she deserves to be heard. And I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to shame her. I'm going to listen. I really got to hope that there's some people that watch that segment and they heard the way he was breaking it down, the way he was saying, hey, look, I know sometimes it's not easy when it involves someone you like. But that's the whole purpose of Me Too. The whole purpose of Me Too wasn't just we believe whatever anyone says. The entire world is guilty until proven innocent. No, that wasn't the purpose of Me Too. It never was. But the purpose of Me Too was to say, yeah, we listen. And we give people a fair shake and a due process, even when it's something that we don't want to be true. We really do. It's not politically convenient for us or just societally convenient for us or whatever it is. That doesn't matter. We have to put our own biases aside. Or at least acknowledge our biases. I watched both of Tara Reade's interviews, the initial ones, the one on Katie Halper's podcast and the one on The Hill Rising. And as I was listening to her and seeing the evidence available, I made the judgment call that, yeah, I believe her. I believe she's telling the truth. I also acknowledge my own personal bias. I am no fan of Joe Biden. I am as far from a Joe Biden fan as you can get. And so, did that bias influence my analysis? I'm sure it did. I'm a human being. We're all influenced by our own biases. That's part of being human. But, the challenge is to try to acknowledge that and wrestle with it as much as you can and do the best you can. So, yeah, I'd like to think there's some people that watch that segment and are now more in tune to the fact that this is happening and more in tune to the fact that Tara Reade deserves to be heard. So, but who knows? I want to believe that. I really do. But based on the response on Twitter, you'd think, yeah, that's probably not the case, Rob. But, all right. So here's something pertaining to broadband. So one of the big missions on this show is the case for municipal broadband, i.e. city-owned internet. And more, one of the many things that's going on in this pandemic is that people are realizing how essential the internet is to our lives, how it should be a utility in our lives, and how there are still so many people who do not have access to decent internet throughout the country. It's still a very real thing. There are underserved areas all throughout the country. Why are the areas underserved? Is it because we're not able to wire the entire country? Well, no, of course we're able to. It's because we have an organized duopoly amidst the cable companies where they kind of map out territories, and one company is the big man on campus in one area, one company's the big man on campus in the other area. Sounds like something a mafia would do, Ron. Yeah, it's the same thing. And they dominate an area and they price gouge an area. And their only concern is the bottom line. So if it's not really financially lucrative for them, or as lucrative as they'd like it to be, they just blatantly underserve an area. And tough cookies. And Ajit Pai and the Trump FCC gutted net neutrality. Net neutrality was the law that designated the internet a utility in our lives. It gave it a Title II designation. And what that means is that the internet is a utility in our lives, kind of like flowing water. That means that websites cannot be discriminated. You cannot give higher priority to some websites over others. You cannot prioritize fast lanes and slow lanes. The internet has to flow like a phone call or like water. That's what net neutrality is. Net neutrality does not allow the government to control the internet. That's not what net neutrality is. That's not what that policy does. What it does do is it protects consumers. It protects consumers from cable companies exploiting them even further. And since that repeal has happened, broadband investment has gone down. Jobs have been lost despite Ajit Pai and the Trump FCC promising the opposite. There are less jobs with AT&T. Broadband investment has gone down. The qualifiers for speeds have not been updated in years. So here's something Ajit Pai did recently. Ajit Pai uses bad data to claim ISPs are deploying broadband to everyone. The FCC a while back issued its annual broadband deployment report, finding for the third straight year that broadband is being deployed to all Americans, except for millions of people. Except for millions of people. As we previously reported, this is from the article at Ars Technica, Comcast lowered capital expenditures in its cable division by 10% in 2019. AT&T is lowering capital investment from $23 billion in 2019 to $20 billion in 2020. And Charter cut capital expenditures from $9.1 billion in 2018 to $7.2 billion. Why is that? Well, because without net neutrality, these companies can get away with even more as far as the horrible service that they offer. So they're cutting corners to please shareholders. Here's what two Democrats who disputed his conclusions said. This report is baffling. We are in the middle of a pandemic. So much of modern life has migrated online. As a result, it has become painfully clear there are too many people in the United States who lack access to broadband. In fact, if this crisis has revealed anything, it is the hard truth that the digital divide is very real and very big. But you'll find no evidence acknowledging that in today's broadband progress report from the FCC. Instead, you'll find a glowing assessment that all is well. According to the Rosy report, the nation's broadband efforts are all good. They are proceeding in a reasonable and timely fashion, and they are reaching all Americans. This is just not right, because 18.3 million people lack access. Also, the FCC broadband speed standard hasn't been updated since 2015. And now you see scenarios where people are in their cars outside of a library to try to get decent internet, or outside of a coffee shop where their Wi-Fi is still going to try to get decent internet. And here's a response that Free Press gave. Digital rights organization Free Press. The Trump FCC's repeal of net neutrality also tossed out the FCC's authority to promote broadband competition, protect public safety, and more. The COVID-19 pandemic has made the need to treat broadband as an essential service now even more urgent. Here's some more what they had to say. On Monday, this was this past week, Free Press filed comments that condemned the FCC's abandonment of its authority to safeguard internet users and promote universal access for open and affordable internet. The Free Press filing notes that the court decision found the FCC under Ajit Pai had arbitrarily failed to address the serious cascading implications of scrapping its Title II classification. The evidence couldn't be clearer. The FCC needs to reclassify broadband as a Title II service. This is the only way to give internet users the legal protections they need to access an open and affordable internet. Title II was the solid foundation for wildly popular net neutrality safeguards, but the law does more than that. Title II classification also gave the agency the authority it needed to ensure that vital programs like Lifeline could support broadband adoption and choice. In other words, one of the things that the Title II classification did, other than just assuring that the internet remains a free and open platform, it also called for it to be a utility in our lives, meaning the FCC could actually do something to help underserved areas. Well, now they can't, because the internet isn't declared a utility. Instead, it's a Title I classification, which just means it's an information service like TV or radio. So they can't do anything about these cable companies in their organized duopoly intentionally underserving areas. They can't do anything about it. So this is why we need net neutrality, and we need to go a step further, and we need to build internet infrastructure that is state and city owned and municipal owned all across the country, because that puts an end to the battle for a free and open internet once and for all. If we have net neutrality written into the charters and we have city-owned internet all across the country, and we can do that one community at a time, it's already happening. This is the way we assure a free and open internet for the foreseeable future. This is the way we prevent a scenario where we're telling our children and grandchildren what the internet used to be like. You mean a comedian could just stream in their living room? Yeah, that used to happen. We don't want to be telling those stories. We want the internet to stay free and open. As my friends at Fight for the Future would say, we got to keep the internet weird. All right, so there's a little net neutrality muni broadband update for everyone. So, guys, Graham Elwood and myself have another show this coming Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can go to ronplacone.com for tickets. The way it works is you grab tickets, and then a Zoom link will be sent to you about an hour before showtime, and then the show starts. It's a Zoom show. They're a lot of fun. We've been doing them every Saturday. We're going to continue doing them until the pandemic is over, as long as we can. And this next one's coming up on Saturday. You can grab your tickets on my website now, ronplacone.com. They're just $5, and it's a good time. So please do consider it. If you are on stable financial ground and are so able, patreon.com/ronplacone. For a Give What You Can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content, including a patrons-only Zoom show once a week. I do a Zoom show just for the patrons. I also do a patrons-only stream where I respond directly to the patrons and only to the patrons, and the replay is only available on Patreon. There's also podcasts, videos, stand-up clips, my album for download in its entirety, all kinds of cool stuff. Even $1 a month goes a long way, and you're helping me expand this show. I want to start making mini documentaries around municipal broadband. Once the pandemic's over, I hope to break ground on that, but I do need more support to make that a reality, because I'm going to have to get a team around me for that. Also, I'm continuing the Sounds of Revolution interview series. Of course, it's all being done remotely right now, which is a bummer, but still making it happen. So if you want to help grow this show, expand this show, and you are so able, I understand not everyone's on easy ground right now. So if you're not, of course, I understand. Don't worry about it. But if you are, and you can spare a little bit a month, even $1 a month goes a long way. Patreon.com/ronplacone. All right. Let me see what you guys are saying. And then we will dismount for the Wild Thursday. What made the Thursday wild? I'm not sure. I don't know why it's a Wild Thursday. I really don't. Emberg, what's up, buddy? Read Caitlin Johnstone's piece on Tara Reade. It's really good. She explains why she didn't talk about it until now and completely buries the elite. Cool. I'm sure it's awesome. I like Caitlin Johnstone's work very much. And I caught up with her for a beer on Zoom. Her and her husband, Tim, we caught up for a Zoom beer. Is that what we're calling them? Zoom beers. Like the beer goes fast. Technically I had a whiskey. So what I just said was fake news, and I apologize. But yeah, I've read part of that article, but I'm definitely going to go back and read the whole thing. I heard she did an excellent job. Kathy Harvey, thank you very much for the cat, giving a thumbs up. I appreciate it. Let's see, and then I got one more here. Let me see here. Boom. Jason, thank you very much. I appreciate that very, very much. Here's to you, Ron. Great show. Thank you. Donation towards a pint of Nancy's finest ice cream or a 6-pack of IPA. Keep covering net neutrality. Thank you for that, Jason. And I will. Thank you, Emberg. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jason. And thank you for being here. Doing this show has helped keep me a little more sane. And I hope it does the same for you. I hope you feel, I know we're all feeling a little bit alone right now. I know the world's getting a little crazy, but hopefully a show like this, you walk away from it feeling a little less alone and feeling like, you know what? I feel like the world at large is crazy. I feel like it's a little insane that that people who consider themselves left-leaning are shaming a reporter for covering a rape allegation just because it's someone they like politically. And that our Overton window is going so far to the right, it's pretty much an authoritarian fascist regime level thinking. But there are people in this country who don't want to accept that as the status quo and want to fight to make a better world for all of us. And yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of hope. I know it does for me. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she went to the chair. Lucy migrated to the chair. But anyway, Lucy says meow, and I say peace. Peace.